Hey guys, welcome to the part 3 of the French Revolution. I've already uploaded the part 1 and the part 2, so make sure you check that out before coming to this because there is a lot of connections and interesting twists before this. So let's get started with the part 3, which is France abolishes the monarchy and becomes a republic. The situation in France continued to be tense during the following years. Although Louis XVI had signed the constitution, he entered into secret negotiations with the King of Prussia. Rulers of other neighboring countries too were worried by the developments in France and made plans to send troops to put down the events that had been taking place since the summer of 1789. So what's happening here is in the situation of France is always being in alarm mode, or it was still being in a tense by the following years. Even if Louis XVI signed the constitution and formed the National Assembly, and there's the 50,000 people were like 745 members, and there would be the National Assembly. It was divided into three: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative. All these were in the previous parts. So yeah, even though he did all this, but he entered into secret negotiations with the King of Prussia. At that time, Prussia is not Russia or something; it's Prussia. So Prussia is a place in Germany. It's not related to Russia, because I thought the same. And rulers of the other neighboring countries were also worried because of the developments of France at that time were not very good, and Fra- they plan to send the troops to put down the events that have been taking place since the summer of 1789. There have been a lot like the guillotine and a lot more those things we'll be learning about them. So a lot of things which are a lot of other countries were also getting worried about the France, and made plans to send troops to put down the events that were done by France and since the summer of 1789. And before this could happen, the National Assembly voted in April 1792 to declare the war against Prussia and Austria. So I already told you that the Prussia and Austria is the place where the queen, which is Mary Antoinette, the wife of the King Louis XVI, is born. So she was an Austrian princess. So there was a war which is against Prussia and Austria. So thousands of volunteers thronged from the provinces to join the army. They saw this as a war of the people against the kings and the aristocracy. The aristocrats means the like the nobles and all of them. So the richer people like the nobles and all of them. So thousands of people thronged means they crowded. Thousands of people crowded from the provinces to join the army of the Prussia and Austria, and this war was against the kings and all the aristocrats. They saw this as a war of the people against the kings and the aristocrats, which are nobles and the richer side of the people all over Europe. And among the patriotic songs, the song was Marseillaise. Marseillaise was composed by Roger de Lille, and it was sung by the first time of the volunteers of Marseillaise as they marched to Paris, and so got its name. And Marseillaise is now the national anthem of France. They sing it to this day too. So how did they among the patriotic songs they sang was the Marseillaise. Marseillaise was composed by Roger de Lille. So it was composed by Roger Disley, and it was sung by the first time of the volunteers of the Marseillaise, and it was sung by them when they marched to the Paris, and it got its name. And till the present day, Marseillaise is the national anthem of France. And the Revolutionary Wars brought losses and economic difficulties to the people, while the men were away fighting at the front. Women were left to cope up with the tasks of earning a living and looking after their families. Large sections of population were convinced that the revolution had to be carried further, as the Constitution of 1791 gave political rights only to the richer sections of the society. So what is happening here is when the revolutionary was happening, it brought a lot of economic difficulties. At that time, the men were fighting, but the women were left to take the tasks of earning a livelihood and taking care of their families. The large sections of the population were convinced that the revolution it was not that very good, because it had a lot of privileges and a lot of rights, which is in the Constitution of 1791. They gave a lot of political rights only to the richer section of the society and not to the poorer or the middle class section. And the political clubs became very important, railing at the point for the people who wished to discuss the government policies and plan their own forms of action. So railing is not, railing means, getting together, getting as a group. So, political clubs, we already saw that there was this pamphlet written by Jean Paul, and everyone were discussing in the coffee shops and the salons like this. Political clubs were being very important at that time because they all get into groups and discuss about the government policies and plan their own forms of action. And the most successful of these clubs was of the Saint Jacobins, which got its name from the former convent of Saint Jacob in Paris. Women too had been active throughout this period, formed their own clubs. Section 4 of this chapter will tell you more about this. In section 4, it's just dedicated to women and how they, had a role in this French Revolution. So the most successful of these clubs, or there was the very important and the most successful club in this was the Saint Jacobins Club, which got its name from the former convent of this Jacob in Paris. Okay, so women also had been active throughout this period. That's all you have to see here. So you just will we know that a very successful club was that of Saint Jacobins, which was the name of the former convent of Saint Jacob from Paris. And the members of the Jacobin Club mainly belong to the less prosperous sections of the society. What is a convent? A convent is like a building belonging to a community which is devoted to a religious life, like churches or like that. It's just dedicated to a religious life like that. So, or to a particular job. For office, they only do it for a particular thing, right? For office means they work for the things that are for office. That's all. They won't work for what's in a church like that. So it's for a specific job. That's all. And yeah, so the members of the Jacobin Club belong to mainly of the less prosperous sections of the society. They included small shopkeepers, artisans such as shoemakers, pastry cooks, watchmakers, printers, as well as servants and daily wage workers. Their leader was Maximilian Robespierre. A large group among the Jacobins decided to start wearing long striped trousers similar to those worn by the dock workers. This was to set themselves apart from the fashionable sections of the society, especially the nobles who wear knee breeches. So what is happening here is in the Jacobins Club, they are not particularly rich people. They are mostly the majority were from the less prosperous sections of the society, and they included like small shopkeepers and artisans and peasants mostly, and like the shoemakers and the pastry cooks and the watchmakers and printers and even daily wage workers and even servants. Like they were from the less prosperous sections of the society, and their leader was Maximilian Robespierre. He is the very important part in the reign of terror, you guys. You have to remember his name. And a large group among this, so they decided to wear the long striped trousers like this to prove their simplicity and not be like the nobles who they just didn't want to go for like the fashionable side of the society. They just want to keep themselves from the simpler ones. They didn't want to be like the nobles who wear like breeches which okay, wait, yeah, let's see. So a large group of the Jacobins decided to start wearing this long kind of striped trousers which were worn by the dock workers. The dock workers means, so a dock worker is a person who helps in like the unloading and loading of goods in the ships. So they went for a very simpler one, and like to not be like the nobles who wore knee breeches. And let's see what this is. So since this was one of the rare paintings at that time, and the revolutionary events made it possible for the women to train with established printers to and exhibit their works in the salon, which was exhibited held every 2 years. The painting is a female allegory of liberty, that is, the female symbolizes the idea of freedom. Okay, you can do this activity, and yeah. So was a way of proclaiming the end of the power wielded by the wearers of knee breeches. These Jacobins came to be known as the sans culottes. They were known as the sans culottes, literal meaning those without the knee breeches. Okay, that's good. And the sans culottes men wore, in addition to a red cap that symbolizes liberty. That's like the cap we read in the the cap we read here, the red fragrant cap. It's worn by a slave upon becoming free. Like that's very meaningful, right? Yeah, so they wore the cap like this, which symbolized liberty and freedom, and women, however, were not allowed to do so. So, what is happening here is the Jacobins came to be known as the sans culottes because they won't. The meaning of it was not wearing knee breeches. That the knee breeches is worn by the nobles, and the sans culottes men were they even wore a cap, which is a red cap, which symbolizes liberty and freedom, but women were not allowed to do so. In the summer of 1792, the Jacobins planned an insurrection of a large number of Parisians who were angered by short supplies and high prices of foods. On the morning of August 10, they stormed the palace of Tuileries, massacred the king's guards, and held the king himself as a hostage for several hours. Later, the assembly voted to imprison the royal family. Elections were held from now on. All men of 21 years and above, regardless of their wealth, got right to vote. Only men. Insurrection means when they violate laws, and there was a large number of Parisians. Parisian is the person who was born in France or is a citizen or an inhabitant of Paris or France. So when all this was happening on the morning of August 10th, they stormed to the palace of the Tuileries. Tuileries is a garden actually, and the massacre of the kings. They massacred the kings, and that is, they killed the people, they killed the king's guards, and then they held themselves as an hostage for several hours. Later, the assembly, which was voted for the imprison of their family, of the royal family, and then the elections were held. From now on, everyone at the, and before, wait, let me show you that. Where is it? Yeah, this one. So, in the Constitution of 1791, only men above the age of 25 who can pay the tax, or which is worth of 3-day labor wage were given. Who can pay that amount of tax were only. They were only allowed to vote, and these people are called as the active citizens. Only 4 million people out of the whole group can vote, and 3 million people cannot. See, passive citizens have no voting rights. Only 3 billion men cannot vote out of 28 million, and 4 million can only vote out of 28 million. They are active, and people who cannot vote are called as passive, and women and children under the age of 25 can also vote. And yeah, so now we already saw here that the men from the age of 21 can vote, and it doesn't matter about their wealth or anything, they can vote. Yeah, so from now on, all the men of 21 years and above, regardless of their wealth, they got the right to vote. Okay, so the newly elected assembly was called the convention. The convention is the elected assembly on the 21st September in 1792. This assembly is called as the convention, and it was abolished the monarchy and declared the France as a republic. It abolished the monarchy. A monarchy is the king. King has this. They say that king has the divine rights, which is the God has made the king in his position. So it's not the true. And monarchy, it abolished monarchy and declared France as a republic. As you know, a republic is a form of a government where people elect the government, including the head of the government. There is no hereditary monarchy. I already told you so many times. Hereditary means, in the previous parts, if there is a king and if the king dies, the daughter or son of the king will be the next king or queen. So that is hereditary, and that is not correct, because everyone should be given equal opportunities. So there is no hereditary monarchy, and this law was passed on the 1792, and it was what and all it abolished? It abolished the monarchy and declared France as a republic. And a republic, what is a republic means? A republic is a form of government where the people can elect their government, including the head of the government too. So there was no hereditary monarchy. I mean, after you there is not your after you there is your daughter or son won't be the king. Everyone will be equal opportunities on their merit only. They will be chosen as the king or the queen. You can try and find out about some other countries that are republics and investigate whether, when and how they became so. So Louis XVI was sentenced to death by a court on the charge of treason, and on 21st January 1793 he was executed publicly in the uh, Place de la Concorde. The Queen Marie Antoinette met with the same fate shortly after. So you guys, what happened is I'll tell you guys clearly. So treason is nothing but the betrayal of their own country, betrayal of one's country or the government. Louis XVI betrayal, having secret negotiations with all those, and he did a lot of betrayal, and he was sentenced to death by a court on the charge of treason. Treason is the betrayal of the country. Remember that. And on the January of 21st on 1793, he was executed publicly at the place de la Concorde. Remember the de la Concorde. And the Queen Marie Antoinette was met with the same fate shortly after. Now, how they were dead? On which they were actually beheaded. Beheaded means, let me show you guys the pic. This is the place where they got beheaded. I'll show you how they got it. And you all can see here, this is the guillotine, you guys, and it was invented by a person, and their heads get just chopped off, and it's a painless way of killing, and it's very fast too. So this is how a lot of people, like nearly 17,000 people, I guess, they were killed. I will tell you guys in the next part, which is the reign of terror, I mean the main part. So you may ask why, this is so interesting, right? But we already completed a lot, and your head will be thinking about so many thoughts. So go ahead and see a normal short video of it, and then go and watch the part 3 of the reign of terror. I mean the part 2 of the reign of terror. We'll complete this part 3, and then we'll go to the part 4, which is, did women have a revolution? It's gonna be really interesting, trust me, and go watch the next part, which is the reign of terror 3.1. Bye.